We are going a little journey here with someone who knows a lot more about the world of business than I do. This is the man we wanted. We're delighted he's here. Please welcome Mr. Andre Taylor.
I started my career on Wall Street. And I started with companies like Dow Jones, Telerate in the information business. And then I moved to Reuters, and I worked for Reuters in the early days of cable television in the news business. I was responsible for running the North American arm of their television group when it first started here in New York. The sports industry was way behind in terms of technology, way behind. And they had absolutely no idea that digital technology was coming. We used to visit something like 200 to 300 sports teams to identify how they use technology. And if you've ever heard or seen what happens, for example, at an NFL team all week, they sit in darkened rooms and they watch video all week. And they identify the plays, and back then they had VCRs, and they fast-forwarded and they rewound, and that's how they identified the plays, and they marked the tape. And we went to the teams and we said, guess what? Digital technology is coming, and you're going to be able to pinpoint exactly where you need to go to identify that play. And you're going to be able to see it repeatedly. And you're going to save this video coordinator who's up all night trying to pinpoint the spot in the video. You're going to save him all night. And you're going to make your coaching staff more efficient. And you know what? Once you do that, you're going to be able to couple that video with text video, with text, digital text. And you will be in a position to have a digital archive that you can then leverage in the marketplace. So you'll be able to take your strategic information and you'll be able to use it commercially. Now, when we went to teams and we explained this to them, they didn't know what we were talking about. But it was a very simple idea. The idea was that we were going to find a way to help these teams use their video. Not only that, we were going to find a way to help them transport that video nationwide from team to team. In the NFL, there's a requirement, for example, that you must share video with your upcoming opponent. So they have video coordinators who shoot the video so that they can do this. Well, we went in and we were the first company to identify that solution, and provide a service to facilitate the transfer and archiving of video. After we did that, we took that digital information and we invented a series of other services aimed at a whole new breed of fans that had not yet been respected and identified. And we began to target women sports fans. We began to target African American sports fans. We began to target fans who are focused on nutrition, sports, and fitness. And we became one of the first companies to supply news and information on wireless devices. Back in I don't know, in the mid-90s, you would walk through the airports and go through SkyTel, and you would be able to pick up a pager, and you would pick up interactive sports news services, which came from our company. And we would supply hundreds of headlines every day to people who had those services. You can read about it, you can hear about it, you can know someone who's done it, but until you are sitting in that chair and you're wondering, how am I going to do this? How am I going to deliver this product? How am I going to pay this bill? How am I going to get the right person in this job? How am I going to grow this company? How am I going to keep this customer? How am I going to compete with this new player in the marketplace? These are things that keep us up at night, that we think about all the time. The real key in marketing successfully is the connection you have between what you have to offer and the value that the person who's taking advantage of it sees. It's being able to give that person a sense of value. So very often it's like going to a restaurant that is not a great looking restaurant. It doesn't necessarily have a great menu, but it resonates with a person. People respond to it because they like going there. And the idea behind marketing successfully, and in particular breakthrough marketing, is figuring out those things that you can do to make that kind of leap in your communication with potential clients. Sometimes when people think about marketing, they think about logos and slogans and brochures. How many think of that as marketing? Nobody wants to raise their hand because they think it's a trick. And what happens very often is when people think of brands, they think of only that. And in reality, marketing and branding, it's the whole experience that you create, the entire experience. From the moment the person interacts with you, from the time that you begin to deliver the service, the type of customers you have, the type of services you offer, the way it looks, the way it feels, the way it sounds, those are all marketing elements. So when you think of marketing, think of that total picture. The other day I was going to a hotel, and I called to get directions to the hotel. And when I called to get directions, and I spoke to someone on the telephone, they said to me, I actually said to them, how do I get to your hotel? And they said, hold on. And when she said, hold on, I thought she was going to take care of someone else for a second. She said, hold on, and she actually transferred me to someone else. And when she transferred me to someone else, the other person answered, and they had no idea why I was calling. So I had to start over, and I had to say, well, how do I get to your hotel? And guess what happened then? The person transferred me to another person. And then the next person picked up the phone, and by then they knew that I wanted directions. But this was an upscale hotel, yet they weren't upscale in the way they dealt with that communication. Now, the fascinating thing to me about those kinds of experiences is that, do you know if you have a negative experience with a firm or a business, that you're going to tell 6, 7, 8, 9 people. Look how many people I'm telling today about this hotel. I'm not going to mention the hotel's name. But when you have a positive experience, you often don't tell as many people. So it's absolutely important that you think about the entire experience as you think about marketing yourself and what you're going to do. Let me tell you what marketing is, in my opinion. Marketing is everything that you do, everything that you say, everything that you're involved in that your customer experiences about your service and about your product. That's what marketing is to me. It isn't necessarily a slogan or a brochure or a tagline or an image. It's all of those things. So what you want to identify in very specific terms is who your customer is. Now, this may sound difficult to do, but it's actually the easiest thing in the world to do. Because your customers would love to tell you all about themselves and what they like and why they like it and what else they do. They love talking about that. You just got to ask enough of them to see trends and to be able to see things that will enable you to identify more people like those people. Now, once you can identify specifically who those customers are, then it's like printing money. Because then you're in a position where you know exactly who to talk to and exactly what to say and exactly how your message is going to be received. Until then, you're going to spend a lot of time talking to people who aren't going to be listening to you. If I were to ask you about entrepreneurship and to talk to me about being an entrepreneur, you'd probably tell me a couple of things. You'd probably tell me, first of all, that a lot of entrepreneurs are wealthy. They're successful. I think entrepreneurs in our society are much more visible than they've ever been. But you might also tell me that being an entrepreneur is hard. You might talk about it being difficult. You might talk about it being challenging, stressful, costly, intimidating. You might even tell me that 4 out of 5 businesses in this country fail. You probably don't run a business. I don't know if many of you do. You may not know a lot about talking about entrepreneurship in terms of the details of running a business, but you certainly know how to start a conversation about entrepreneurship, because most people start a conversation that way. When I was about 16 years old, I used to listen to a radio program here in New York, and there was a celebrity radio host who used to talk about business issues. And I used to listen to this program every day, and one of the things that I would listen to is I would hear this fellow counsel other people about how to start their businesses. And by the time I was probably 16 or 17 years old, I knew all about business plans and investment accounts and wills and estates and all those things because I would listen to this program every day. One day I decided that I was going to give a call to this host and talk to him about my idea for starting a business. The host jumps on the phone and he says, "Andre from Brooklyn, welcome to the show. How can I help you?" And fighting back stage fright, I said, my well-rehearsed response was, "I am thinking of starting a company to help other people start companies. And maybe we'll do some training things, maybe we'll write a book, maybe we'll have some tools for them. And I want to help other people who want to start businesses." I think a lot of people want to start businesses these days. He said, "Andre, what do you know about starting a business?" Now, I hadn't anticipated that question, so I got a little quiet. And I stammered a bit, I thought about it a bit, and I said, "Well, you know, entrepreneurship is getting really popular. And I work for a guy who's a great entrepreneur." At the time, I worked for a fellow who was an entrepreneur who had a very successful business. And I said, "Well, I've worked for an entrepreneur for some time, and I believe that I've learned a lot from him, and I could see where this would be something that would be very valuable." And he said, "Andre, wait a second. You didn't hear what I said. What do you know about starting a business?" And I, again, started to stammer and started to say a few things. And then he cut me off. And he said, "Andre, do me a favor. When you understand the business that you want to start, and you have experience in it, give me a call back." And with that, he disconnected the call and went on to the next caller. Looking back at that, I think that the radio host asked me the obvious question. But what I've come to understand is that it was the wrong question. It's not about the experience you have in business. It's not about some laundry list of accomplishments or courses that you've taken. It's not about the passion that you see other people have. It's the experience that you can't live without. A couple of years ago, I decided to get together with a few friends of mine for dinner. And we were going to one of our favorite Thai restaurants. And we went to the restaurant. It was a wonderful restaurant. We were all having a good time. We were sitting around the table. And just as we were about to eat, and as the pad thai noodles arrived, I looked around the table, and I noticed something that I've actually noticed quite a bit since then. And it's probably something that you've noticed yourself. When I looked around the room, and I looked at the various people that were there, every single person was involved in a business, would consider themselves, some of them would consider themselves an entrepreneur, or involved in some sort of enterprise. Everybody. Now, some of them were in education, some were involved in the arts, some were involved in finance. And in fact, some of them might not even think of themselves as a typical entrepreneur. But I was fascinated by this fact because everyone was involved in some sort of enterprise. Now, I think that this experience illustrates one of the profound shifts today in the world. There was a time when the word entrepreneurship was actually not a good word. If you called someone an entrepreneur, what you typically thought of was someone who was sort of a schemer, someone who was sort of not sort of doing things, sort of a huckster. But today, entrepreneurs are fashionable. It's fashionable to talk about entrepreneurship. Even more than that, entrepreneurship has become embedded in our society. It's embedded in our society. This gentleman that I had a conversation with just a moment ago said, business is everything. He said it's everything. Entrepreneurship is no longer a separate thing. I believe that in a nonprofit environment today, companies that are nonprofit, you will see, and I have seen this, a much more dynamic push towards identifying entrepreneurial milestones. I'm actually working with an organization right now, and they have very definite objectives. Now, having said that, the not-for-profit sector is really growing, by leaps and bounds. I mean, we're learning as a culture how important it is to give back. And there's a tremendous amount of new growth in that area. At one point, there was a little bit of a lull in terms of funding and support because of 9/11. A lot of support that would typically go to other charities was going to 9/11-based charities. But my view is that there's a tremendous opportunity there, not only in the context of teaching these organizations how to be more dynamic and strategic and entrepreneurial, but giving them a greater visibility and brand awareness and footprint, because there's a very competitive environment right now.
I want to give Andre Taylor a really big hand for a terrific presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Andre.
Thank you.